When my brother shut my 8-year-old daughter out of the vacation rental, leaving her barefoot and sobbing on the front porch for 4 hours, saying, "This space is for real family only," and my parents nodded in agreement, I didn't scream. I didn't argue. I took calculated action. Within 5 days, their entire world began crumbling. When I agreed to let my daughter join my family on their coastal getaway, I convinced myself it was the right decision. Ocean breezes, time with cousins, building memories with her grandparents. What harm could possibly come from it? I pictured snapshots of beach adventures and sun-kissed smiles. My partner Marcus and I were both tied up with work obligations, so we remained home and allowed them to take little Rosie. It seemed innocent enough at the time, their family after all. Looking back, I realize how catastrophically wrong I was. 10 days later, they returned. They arrived at my parents' house in the late afternoon, their vehicle practically gleaming with satisfaction and suntan lotion. Everyone spoke simultaneously. My brother Dylan, my mother, my father. Their laughter overlapped like a carefully orchestrated performance they'd been rehearsing for days. Rosie emerged last, gripping her stuffed penguin by one flipper. Sunlight caught her dark curls, and momentarily I noticed she seemed changed somehow. Those imperceptible transformations that occur when you're not watching. Then she raised her eyes to meet mine, and her expression carried a seriousness that didn't belong on an 8-year-old's face. "Hey there, sweetheart," I said, kneeling to her level. "Did you enjoy yourself?" She nodded with excessive quickness, the way children do when adults ask if they've understood instructions they haven't really processed. Dylan leaned against the vehicle, his sunglasses reflecting the afternoon light. "You should have witnessed it, Jennifer. So calm once she adjusted to our rhythm." The entire experience was like that, honestly. Calm. My family's preferred descriptor for situations where someone stays quiet enough to be forgotten. My mother extended a decorative starfish ornament toward me. "See? Absolutely perfect." I manufactured a smile sufficient to satisfy them. Rosie pressed herself against my hip, clutching my jacket. Her grip communicated volumes more than her facial expression ever could. The drive home stretched out in silence, just the engine's rhythm and Rosie's gentle breathing from the rear seat. With each passing mile, the quietness grew more oppressive. She didn't request her favorite songs. She didn't hum her usual melodies. She simply stared through the window as though the world existed somewhere impossibly distant. By the time we pulled into our driveway, my stomach ached from suppressing anxious thoughts. During dinner, she rearranged her food without eating. Typically, she narrates elaborate stories that twist and turn until I lose track of the characters and plot lines. That evening, absolute silence. "Perhaps she's simply exhausted," Marcus suggested when he noticed me watching her. "Perhaps," I replied. But the word felt hollow and unconvincing. After dinner, Rosie went directly to her bedroom without requesting her bedtime story. That had never occurred in her entire existence. Her small nightlight painted the walls in warm amber tones. The stuffed penguin sat propped on her pillow like a silent observer. I tucked the covers around her. "Did you have fun with Grandma and Uncle Dylan?" She nodded. Then, barely audible, she whispered, "I wasn't being too noisy today, was I?" The question made no logical sense. "You? Noisy?" "Never, honey. Why would you ask that?" She blinked slowly. "Then I get to sleep inside tonight, right?" My heart seemed to skip several beats. "Of course you sleep inside. Why would you possibly think otherwise?" She drew a trembling breath. "Uncle Dylan said when I'm loud, I have to wait outside until I'm quiet enough. Grandma said proper girls don't cry. I waited for a really long time." The bedroom suddenly felt impossibly small. I maintained a gentle voice. "Outside where exactly?" She gestured toward the door. "On the porch. It was getting dark, but then I was quiet, so they unlocked the door." Every drop of blood in my veins turned glacial. "What else did they tell you?" Her eyes began filling with moisture. That the rental was just for family, that I needed to earn my way back inside. That sentence shattered something fundamental within me. Every instinct screamed to drive through the night and force them to face what they'd done. But Rosie's expression stopped me. She was monitoring my reaction, calculating how frightened she should be. So I smiled, that fragile emergency smile parents manufacture, and said, "You're my family, always and forever. Nobody can ever change that truth." She nodded and closed her eyes, clutching the penguin tightly. I remained seated on her bed's edge until the house fell completely silent, fury burning through me like fever. The following morning, the kitchen seemed excessively bright. I'd spent half the night replaying Rosie's words in my mind. Uncle Dylan said the rental was just for family. Marcus poured coffee, observing me pace. "You're confronting them," he stated. "Absolutely." I dialed Dylan's number. He answered with artificial brightness. "Jennifer, everything all right?" "I need clarification about something. Rosie mentioned you made her stand on the porch." A pause, followed by dismissive laughter. "Oh, that situation? She was completely fine. We simply required some peace." "So you genuinely sent her outside?" "She was misbehaving," he said, his tone becoming defensive. "Everyone needed rest." "Did you lock the door?" "Jesus, Jennifer, you're being overdramatic. It was briefly." She said 4 hours. "That's completely ridiculous. She's exaggerating." My throat felt constricted. "And you told her the rental was exclusively for family?" Another laugh, sharper now. "It was joking around. You've always taken everything so seriously." "I'm taking this seriously because you humiliated my daughter." From somewhere behind him, my mother's voice called out, "She's perfectly fine. Don't manufacture conflict over nothing." "Nothing," I repeated slowly. "You consider that nothing?" Dylan exhaled like I was a child having an irrational tantrum. "You weren't present, Jennifer. You don't understand how disruptive she becomes. We were exhausted." I said nothing. He filled the silence. "You constantly blow situations out of proportion. You've always been excessively sensitive." "I'm sensitive," I said quietly, "because you made my daughter cry alone on a porch." The line went completely still. Then Dylan said, his voice cold, "You need to settle down." I terminated the call. Marcus looked at me expectantly. "Well?" "They actually did it," I said. Rosie wandered into the kitchen, sleepy smile, hair sticking up at odd angles. I pulled her close and kissed the top of her head. She didn't need to hear what I'd just heard. Something within me settled. Not calmness, not forgiveness. Something sharp and irreversible. They assumed it was finished, that I'd simply let it dissolve. They were catastrophically wrong. I didn't sleep that night. I simply lay there, staring at the ceiling, hearing Rosie's small voice repeating endlessly. The rental was just for family. Family. What a beautiful word to conceal something rotten beneath. By morning, my anger had nowhere external to direct itself, so it turned inward. I kept questioning myself with the inquiry that always follows betrayal. How did I not anticipate this? That's the reality about my family. They don't initiate with disasters. They begin with small preferences that appear harmless until they become unbreakable laws. Dylan was 3 years older, but he might as well have been born into royalty. He was the golden child, the entrepreneur, the son who transformed garage ideas into potential empires. I was the one who organized the paperwork afterward so nothing fell through regulatory cracks. When he launched his first startup, Dad called it investing in vision. When I earned my doctorate, he said, "That's wonderful, honey. Maybe you'll consult for corporations someday." They claimed they loved us equally, but equality in our household was mythology designed to keep me compliant. When Dylan pitched his first business plan to investors, a rambling, idealistic presentation about disrupting traditional markets. My parents wept like they'd witnessed revolutionary genius. When I published my first research paper, Mom smiled and said, "You've always been so methodical." Methodical. Translation: forgettable. I learned early that my accomplishments were appreciated the way you appreciate functioning plumbing. You only notice when something breaks. Dylan married another entrepreneur, a woman who used phrases like synergy and market positioning and capital constraints. They spent years pursuing ventures, and my parents financed the pursuit. Rent, childcare, business expenses, it was all part of supporting innovation. Meanwhile, I was working through graduate school with scholarships, research assistantships, and coffee strong enough to corrode stomach lining. Nobody offered assistance. They simply said, "You're so self-sufficient, Jennifer." Self-sufficiency. That was my assigned role in the family narrative, the one who doesn't require validation. By the time Rosie was born, they'd already transformed grandparenting into selective theater. Dylan's children had elaborate photo albums and weekend adventures. Rosie had perhaps 4 pictures with them total, one including my mother checking her phone. I told myself it was acceptable. I told myself affection doesn't require symmetry. But it does, actually. It genuinely does. Then my biotech company began expanding. The quiet little pharmaceutical research project that nobody had inquired about suddenly became profitable. One contract, then multiple, then industry recognition. And almost immediately, the family that had treated me like background furniture remembered my contact information. The first time Mom called simply to chat, I thought she'd dialed incorrectly. Then she said, "Your father and I were discussing how much we miss Rosie. We'd love to visit." Rosie was 4, still learning to write her name. She'd barely spent time alone with them, but suddenly, they missed her. When they arrived, they brought presents, questions, even apparent interest. It felt manufactured but tempting, like offers that seemed too advantageous to be legitimate. I wanted to believe it. God, I desperately wanted to believe it. Then came the requests. It started modestly. Dylan's business equipment failed. Could I help temporarily? Then we're behind on commercial rent, just for a few months. Then your brother's company got accepted into an accelerator program, but relocation costs are substantial. Each request arrived wrapped in guilt and gratitude. "You're doing so remarkably well, honey." We hate asking, and I, foolish as I was, kept agreeing. Because I could afford it. Because it felt like connection. Even if I had to purchase admission. Eventually, the visits became less about Rosie and more about logistics. Who needed what, when, and how much? I became the family financial institution with a smile. And still, the subtle jabs continued. "You're fortunate your industry is booming," Dylan said once, drinking wine I'd purchased. "Your brother works so tirelessly," Mom added. It's simply unfair how challenging entrepreneurship is. Fortunate. That word lodged beneath my skin like a splinter. They called me successful, but they said it like an accusation. I think it bothered them that I'd built something substantial without their assistance. That I'd stopped needing them before they ever learned how to genuinely show up. And then came the vacation. Dylan called first, full of enthusiasm. "We're planning a family getaway." The kids are begging for Rosie to join. "She'll have an incredible time." I hesitated. My instincts said decline. My guilt said accept, Mom reinforced. "It'll be wonderful for her, Jennifer. The cousins are inseparable. You can trust us." They made it sound like an act of love, not a transaction. But naturally, I paid for it anyway. Rosie's flight, partial accommodation costs, shared expenses. I was accustomed to paying. That was my role now. Financier of family bonding. Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Are you certain about this?" "They're family," I said. He muttered. "So are sharks." I laughed, but the sound caught awkwardly in my throat. When they arrived to collect Rosie, everyone was radiating joy. Dylan's children chanted her name excitedly. My parents promised to take excellent care of her. Rosie was glowing, 8 years old and ready for adventure. I told myself this represented progress. I told myself they were genuinely trying. I told myself I was being paranoid, and temporarily that lie held. Long enough for them to drive away. Long enough for the house to go quiet. Long enough for me to believe that history doesn't always repeat itself, but the reality about patterns is they don't disappear. They simply wait, and that's how we arrived here. Rosie barefoot on a rental porch, and me staring at the ceiling, wondering when exactly I learned to mistake cruelty for family tradition. The morning after everything, I stopped pretending. Rosie left for school with her penguin in one hand and a partially eaten granola bar in the other. I watched her walk down the sidewalk until she turned the corner, her small backpack bouncing rhythmically. Then the house went completely still. Silence, my favorite deceiver. I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop open, staring at a spreadsheet of automated payments glowing like a confession. Mortgage transfers, temporary business support, program deposits, allowances. Everything that had gradually transformed me into a lifeline I didn't remember volunteering to become. Marcus leaned against the doorframe, watching me like someone observing a live wire. "You're genuinely doing this?" Apparently so. The first click was small. "Cancel transaction." The second. Louder. By the fifth, my heart was racing. Each confirmation felt like severing through tendon, painful, deliberate, irreversible. When the final notification flashed payment canceled, I closed the screen and saw my reflection in the black surface. Eyes raw, mouth determined. Rosie's voice flickered through my memory. "I wasn't being too noisy today, was I? Family." That word doesn't signify what I believed it did. 2 days later, the phone rang. Predictably. "Hey." Dylan's voice came through, excessively sweet. "The payment for the business insurance didn't process. Some technical error?" "No error." Silence hummed between us, static and disbelief. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I'm no longer paying." His laugh was quick, sharp, defensive. "Is this about that misunderstanding again?" "That misunderstanding was you locking my daughter outside for 4 hours." "Jesus, you're so dramatic. I learned from the best." A pause. "Then you've changed. You think money makes you superior?" "No," I said. "It just makes you notice me now, right before I vanish." I ended the call before he could recover. My hands were trembling so violently I nearly dropped the phone. Outside, a delivery truck rumbled past. Someone walked a dog. The world remained ordinary, like it hadn't just fractured. The following day, my parents called. "The mortgage payment didn't process," my father said, bypassing greetings. "You can't simply stop, Jennifer. We'll lose the house. Then sell it." Mom's voice slid into the call, high and strained. "After everything we've done for you?" "Exactly." For a moment, nobody breathed. Then I disconnected. The air around me felt electric. Not triumph. Something colder. Like standing in the ashes of your own demolished house, realizing you're free because there's nothing remaining to burn. The messages started that evening. "You're punishing us. You'll regret this. We just needed peace and quiet. Peace and quiet." The phrase made me laugh so hard I startled the cat. I didn't respond to any of them. At night, guilt arrived in bursts like static shocks beneath my ribs. But each morning I remembered Rosie on that porch, barefoot crying, and the guilt died repeatedly. By day 3, the silence had a strange quality of peace. I woke without checking my phone, without dreading who needed what. Even my sleep felt lighter, like my brain finally stopped calculating who I was keeping afloat. A week later, the doorbell rang. I knew who it was before opening it. My parents stood there like actors awaiting applause, and Dylan was between them, his sunglasses pushed into his hair like a crown. "Jennifer," Mom began, smiling too widely, "we simply want to clear the air." "There's nothing to clear." They swept into the hallway anyway, dragging cologne and tension with them. Dylan spoke first. "You've lost your mind. You realize that? All this over one misunderstanding?" "One misunderstanding?" I said. "You abandoned an 8-year-old alone on a porch." "She was misbehaving," Dylan snapped. We were teaching her respect. You were teaching her fear. My father stepped forward, palms raised, like he could still play mediator. Jennifer, sweetheart, we apologized. What more do you want? For you to stop living on my income. The words fell between us like a hammer. Mom's face pinched. You've become cruel? No, I said quietly. I've become finished. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then Rosie's footsteps creaked on the stairs. She stood halfway down, her stuffed penguin clutched against her chest, watching the scene unfold with wide eyes. Go back to your room, honey, I said gently. She didn't move until Dylan turned toward her, and then she bolted. When the door finally closed behind them, the house didn't feel cleaner. It felt heavier, like every argument still hung in the air, waiting for me to breathe it in. That night, Marcus poured 2 glasses of wine and didn't say anything. He didn't have to. The silence between us wasn't empty. It was full of everything we'd both wanted to say for years. I stared out the window at the streetlights blinking through the rain. The rebellion didn't feel like victory. It felt like ash, like burning a bridge and realizing you're still standing in the smoke. But beneath the sting, there was something steadier, not joy, not relief, something like clarity. I checked my phone one final time. No missed calls, no new messages. The screen stayed black, and for the first time in years, the silence belonged to me. I thought that would conclude everything. But endings have a way of fighting back. If there's one lesson I've learned about peace, it's that it never lasts long enough to finish a cup of coffee. A week after the confrontation, life had almost reset. Rosie was constructing cardboard castles for school projects. Marcus was humming while packing her lunch. Even the air felt softer, like it had forgotten how to burn. Then my inbox chimed. Subject: The hidden truth about BioCrest Pharmaceuticals. For your consideration. Dylan, my stomach plummeted. I should have deleted it. I should have thrown my laptop out the window and relocated to another continent. Instead, I clicked. The email said, "You've always cared about reputation. Perhaps this will help people see reality." There was a link. Naturally, there was a link. I pressed play. Soft piano music. A clean white title card. The hidden truth about BioCrest Pharmaceuticals. Inside the ethics of Jennifer Crawford's empire. BioCrest Pharmaceuticals. My company, my life. My carefully constructed promise that innovation and integrity can coexist without destroying each other. Dylan knew exactly where to strike. The footage appeared professional. Stolen interviews, conference clips, screenshots of my presentations about transparency and ethical research. My face appeared beside graphs and press quotes like I was the poster child for hypocrisy. Then his voice came through, calm and smooth, like a documentary narrator. Behind every so-called ethical company lies a truth they don't want exposed. A photo of me at a charity gala. Cut to Mom saying, "She's always been about appearances." Then Dylan again. "She abandoned her family. She purchases morality with money." I felt the blood drain from my body. This wasn't journalism. This was an assassination. I could already visualize the damage. Investors withdrawing. Journalists investigating for scandal. My board demanding official statements. My company existed on credibility. Once that cracked, everything would collapse, and Dylan knew it. He'd constructed the entire production like a weapon. Part truth, part lie. All poison. Then came the final blow, Rosie blurred, but still unmistakable. Her small face at the beach, eyes red from ocean water and exhaustion. The voiceover said, "Even her daughter has learned that compassion ends where profit begins." I froze. Rosie crying in a clip I'd taken years ago when she'd fallen off her bicycle. Dylan had extracted it from a shared family cloud folder and transformed it into evidence of neglect. My throat burned. They weren't simply trying to ruin me. They were using my child to accomplish it. I slammed the laptop shut so forcefully the coffee mug rattled. The kitchen went silent except for my pulse. I called him immediately. He answered on the first ring. "Impressive production," I said. "I told you," he replied. All soft righteousness. People should understand what kind of person you genuinely are. You mean the person who stopped financing your failures? You call it boundaries. I call it cruelty. Investors will call it fraud once they see the complete picture. You're threatening me. He laughed. Oh, Jennifer, it's simply storytelling. Unless, naturally, you'd prefer it never goes public. That's still an option. You simply have to make things right. The words landed like ice. Make things right. This wasn't revenge. It was blackmail. He wanted money. Silence money. The price of peace. I hung up before I said something that would end with criminal charges. Outside, the world was ordinary again. Someone mowing grass, a child on a scooter, sunlight pretending everything was fine. By noon, I was in my attorney's office. She watched the first 2 minutes of the video, her jaw tightening. He's naming your company directly? Yes? Then this isn't simply defamation. It's commercial interference. And using your daughter's image without consent? That's a second lawsuit waiting to happen. I sat there trembling. The kind of trembling that feels like rage trying to find shape. Can I stop him? If he publishes, we'll file immediately, the attorney said. If he threatens to, that's extortion. Either way, you have leverage. The courts will support you. For the first time in days, I could breathe again. Law, cold, clean, relentless, was finally mine to wield. We arranged a meeting. My attorney insisted she handle it. I said fine, but I'd be present. That night, Rosie was asleep when I checked on her. The nightlight turned her hair golden. I brushed it back and whispered, "They don't get to touch us anymore." She murmured something in her dreams. Maybe castle, maybe safe. The following morning, my family arrived like they were appearing on a talk show. Polite smiles, polished lies, the attorney began, voice steady. This production contains false statements and defamatory material. If you release or distribute it, my client will pursue legal and criminal action, including unauthorized use of a minor's likeness for extortion. The word extortion landed like a stone. Dylan's smirk twitched. It's a documentary. No, I said. It's a ransom demand with editing. My mother gasped softly, as if I'd said something obscene. My father started a sentence and couldn't finish it. You think you're untouchable? Dylan snapped. You built your empire on lies. Interesting, I said. That's exactly what you're doing now. The attorney folded her hands. If the video appears anywhere, we'll have it removed within hours and pursue damages. The penalties will be substantial. Dylan's face went pale. He sat there for several seconds, silent, jaw tight, trying to find a version of this moment where he still had power. The room held its breath. Then, fine, you win. You always win, he stormed out. My parents followed like smoke. Afterward, I drove to Rosie's school and parked across the street. The children spilled out loud and alive. Rosie ran toward me, face open and unhurt by the world. They'd tried to destroy that. They'd tried to make her part of their narrative. Never again. That night I emailed the attorney. Proceed with full restrictions and the no contact order. Then I opened the family group chat and pressed delete. The screen went blank. The silence that followed was cleaner than forgiveness. Rosie slept soundly. I stood in the doorway, watching her chest rise and fall, thinking how they'd called it truth. They'd called it journalism, but it was always just cruelty dressed as honesty. They thought they could use her to reach me. Now they never will. They resented me because I had more. But what I have can't be purchased. A year later, everything looks different. The company's expanded beyond projections. New investors, new research facilities, industry recognition I barely have space to display. Turns out integrity sells better once you survive an attempted character assassination. Rosie's thriving too. She's 9 now. Vibrant, loud. A one-girl parade of stories and songs. She fills every room she enters. She laughs with her whole face. And when she speaks, nobody tells her to hush. She understands now that her voice isn't something to diminish. We haven't spoken to my family since that day. I don't block their numbers. I simply never need to look. The silence remained clean. Occasionally, someone from the extended family drops information like breadcrumbs. Dylan's marriage didn't survive past summer. Irreconcilable differences, apparently. She said he was controlling. He said she was undermining him. Translation: divorce. Custody battles. Chaos. He quit entrepreneurship, or maybe entrepreneurship quit him. It never paid. Just burned through every dollar my parents once bragged about investing. Now he's doing something stable, though nobody remembers exactly what. Corporate job, modest paycheck, no spotlight. My parents downsized too. All that money they poured into his ventures evaporated faster than morning fog. I could feel sorry for them, but I don't. They chose their masterpiece. Rosie doesn't ask about them anymore. She's too busy building cardboard kingdoms and narrating them at full volume. Sometimes I catch myself wondering if I went too far. Then I remember that porch, the locked door, and the sound of my daughter crying. So, what do you think? Did I go too far or not far enough? Word count, 5,247 words.